How many of you have been like me when you were a principal and you've had to deal with an irate parent and the parent just simply continued to take up for her child and she just didn't want to hear what you had to say about her child's misbehavior? And when that parent left, you said, "Hmm, now I know why her child acts that way." I've said that, some of you probably been there, done that as well. And how many of you feel frustrated because you're noticing that the same kids are having to be suspended over and over? And you feel more frustrated because it doesn't seem as though the parents are supporting you, or they're not trying to enforce anything at home that's going to make that child change his behavior. If that's you, I feel you. And during our time together today, we're going to be sharing some things that will really put some light on looking at our children's behavior. You know, when I was principal, I had a parent in my office, and her child, of course, had disruptive behavior, and the parent just didn't want to hear anything I had to say. The parent was upset. She stood up and she said that I didn't know how to run a school and walked out, and she threatened me. And in my frustration, I walked out behind her and really called her out and said, if I'm all that, we'll bring it. Well, thanks to my security and my office staff, I was able to report to my job the next day. But trust me, I saw my career flash in front of my face. And the thing that was so frustrating to me and what made me so upset is because I too, like most of you, believe in the traditional, conventional wisdom. And that is, these kids, they know what to do. They just choose not to. These children are receiving poor parenting at home. They're just letting the kids do anything they want to do. They're permissive. They're lazy. They don't have any home training. And if they did a better job at home with their kids, then we wouldn't be having all this misbehavior at school. That's truly what I believe. But the issue is that we believe that, and we're continuing to suspend our kids, and we're using all types of techniques, all types of processes, and we're still not seeing the kind of change in behavior that we would expect. And we're looking at the parents. So today, what we're going to be looking at and peeling the onion back on is, one, they know what to do, and they know better. They're just choosing not to. Are incentives and consequences working? Is it? I mean, we all do it. We do it over and over and over. But then we're really getting the same kind of results. And we're saying that these children, they're just choosing. They're just deciding that this is what they're going to do. And it's all back traced to poor parenting. So if we're looking at the topic tonight, does blaming parents change the behavior? What do you think about that? Well, my name is Barbara Polk. I am known as a turnaround principal. I have been assigned to low-performing campuses throughout the state of Texas, and we're able to turn the schools around. And I've been having to deal with these kinds of issues at schools that are low performing because those are the places where the majority of our kids are being suspended, especially our kids of color and our kids that are in our low income neighborhoods and our rural kids. We pretty much label our parents when these students are misbehaving. And I just knew that there were other ways to deal with the behavior, but I found recently that the conventional wisdom has a twist to it. And I found that there is something else that you can add to your arsenal so that you can approach these children who are having this challenging misbehavior. There is something else that you can do to assist those students. I want you to hit that share button, and I want you to share this information with your friends, with your colleagues, and I give you the opportunity also to join Principals on the Come Up, where we transform schools into hallelujah success stories. You know, being an assistant principal, for those of you who are assistant principals or have been assistant principals, you know that all of the referrals end up on your desk. And the teachers send them over and over, and they expect you to do something. And usually the expecting you to do something is suspend them. And we know the consequences of suspending. But the deal is that we don't build a relationship with those kids. As a matter of fact, we don't know what else to do with them but suspend them. To hold them out of the class for a period of time and then let them go back, because you can't just have them all piled up in your office when you're an assistant principal. And it also, you feel frustrated because you have to call these parents, the same parents, over and over. You know, I had a story of a parent who was a single parent, and she had, several kids. And I called her one more time for her to come and pick her child up who had misbehaving challenges all the time. And that parent told me, she said, "Ma'am, I would come and pick him up, but I have left my job so many times at Jack in the Box that my boss told me if I leave my job one more time, I'm not going to have my job again." And you say, well, can't she? I mean, while she's home, can't she do something with him so that we don't have to continue to suspend him? But you get that kind of frustration when you're calling your parents and you have that conventional wisdom. Well, I want to share some things with you tonight about the conventional wisdom. And it's through the readings of Dr. Ablon, who is at the Massachusetts General Hospital. And they have done research on dealing with these children who have this misbehaving relationship with everybody who's in the building. Everybody knows them. Everybody knows about their reputation. But all you have in your arsenal is to suspend them or put them in ISS or whatever consequence you have. Or if they do the right thing for a certain period of time, then you'll give them an incentive. And all of that is just not working. So what we're looking at now is treating this misbehaving behavior as a learning disability. You say, what? Another kind of disability? Well, sort of. Well, what the issue is that if we treat this challenging misbehavior as a disability, that means that we are going to have to build the skill of the student. Because when students constantly are lacking when students are constantly disruptive, there is a lack of skill involved with that. There is something that is going on with that student. And what we have to learn to do are to look at all of the different types of challenging behaviors, which are, your implosive, your explosive, your running, your crying, your kicking, all of those, and then identify the skill deficit. That's what we're looking at with those misbehaving students. And we do that missing skill deficit assessment when everything is calm. So you build your data, and then you look at it, and then you meet and decide what is it that you can do in order to build the skill in that child, so that we don't have a continuous disruption. They get to our office, they're high energy, they're kicking, they're screaming, they're cursing, they're saying, don't bother me, or I don't want to talk about it. That's not the time to deal with it. The time to deal with it is going back, looking at your referrals, see what was happening, and then starting to build the skill of that student. Then, you have to solve the problem. And that's not, you ask them, well, why do you do this? They don't know why. They keep doing it. So it's on us to help them figure out why they do it, and to give them some choices that they can make. Help them solve the problem. So if you have a student who's in a class, for example, I had a very, very smart young man who was in a class, and for testing, he had to be placed with another teacher, with a person who wasn't his usual teacher. And of course, those tests count. The accountability is riding on that. And this student, he knew everything. He was smart, but he decided that day that he wasn't going to write anything on his paper. He wasn't going to do anything. He wasn't going to, put his name or anything on the paper. Name is everything, but putting anything on the paper. And he was disrespectful to the teacher. So of course he landed in my office, as usual. All I knew was he and that teacher had conflicting personalities. So I moved him to another environment. Of course, I had to check off. I had to explain, why I was doing that, the whole 9 yards. But had I been more proactive with knowing, first of all, when those roles came out, that this child and this teacher, it just wasn't going to happen. And if it did have to happen, we could work up some type of skill that we could develop with him to be able to work within that environment. So we're looking at not necessarily parents. I think parents, they do everything they can, everything they have their ability to do. You can take a parent who is a great parent, and all of her students are succeeding. But then you can flip that by giving her this disruptive child, and all of a sudden she's not a good parent anymore. She's a bad parent. And while it's not her parenting, is that child doesn't have the skill to be able to function in that environment. And remember, when we are developing skills for our children to function in environments that, they have not been taught to function in, a lot of times their parents, they can't give you what they don't have. So they're dependent on us. So let's look at this misbehavior. Let's collaborate. Let's collaborate with the parents. Let's collaborate with our counselors and with the students and with the teachers, and not just rely on the incentives and on the consequences, because it's just not working. So assess where the student is, assess how you can collaborate to find out how you can build the skill in those students who are misbehaving, and they are your constant misbehaving behaviors. You know, they're the high flyers, the constant flyers. They're always in the office. Everybody knows who they are. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge. So my challenge for you the rest of this week is to look at and assess your students who are misbehaving before they get to the misbehaving, and try to determine what it is that you can do to build the skill of that child. And I want you to be able to answer the question, does blaming the parents change the behavior of the students? That's something I want you to think about. Well, I want you also to join Principals on the Come Up, where we transform schools into hallelujah success stories, where we come on every week and we do a training like this so that we can become better principals, assistant principals, counselors, parents to our children. Our children who are in our urban settings, our children who are in our rural settings, our children of color. We need to find ways to make sure that they are successful, because when they are successful, then our community is successful and our economy is successful. And then our students can go on and say, if it wasn't for the school that I went to, who thought enough of me with my misbehavior to build a skill in me to learn how to assess the things that I do, that's going to enable me to be successful in life. So hit that link. There's a link at the bottom, and there's a link at the top of the description where you can join Principals on the Come Up. And we'll see you next week, where we're Principals on the Come Up, where we transform schools into hallelujah success stories.